Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 485. 485. July the 8th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you so much for the wonderful comments in the comments section. And particularly a couple of the links, a really good link that was left for me. I think it was Joe Mack left me the link, I think. Or Gordon, one of the two. Left me the link for the Dan Bongino episode. Which I just watched earlier. Very, very good. I love Dan Bongino, and he and I are very similar. Joe D. Geneva. We're all kind of in the same. We're on the same track. Different from a lot of other people. I mean, I think we're a little deeper and a little closer to the root of the problem. Whether people are still dancing around the general deep state, the FBI, Strzok page, yeah. They're critical to everything, but if you want to get to the real nut of the issue, you got to go deeper, and the origins are in the intelligence apparatus, and I think that's where the origins are, and I do believe that that's me and Bongino and a few others are a little ahead of the curve, I think. Not so much because we're ahead of the curve, because we're smarter than everybody else, but in terms of like the Congress and Nunes and the committees, they cannot get ahead of themselves. They can only, they can't go beyond what the evidence is. They can only talk about, we have evidence of this, tells us this, it leaves us questions about this, but they can't really get into the speculation that I can on a YouTube video, or DeGenova can, or that Dan Bongino can on his radio show. We can speculate a little more than they can. So we just have to be patient. They will get there. But thanks so much, Joe Mack, for leaving that link. That was an excellent episode. And I know we have a lot of fans, Dan Bongino fans, that follow my channel as well. So anyway, yeah, thanks a lot. Great comments. And some of you also made comments on my sex rant yesterday. Yeah, I mean, it's not everyone. I mean, it's not 100%. There are exceptions to the rule. And I should also probably mention something else. It may have something to do with it. I am 15 years older than my girlfriend. Okay, so my girlfriend's quite a bit younger than me. So that may have something else to do with it as well. I'm old. I'm old and tired. She's young and spry, okay? Let's put it that way. Now, let's get on to the real important stuff here. A lot of people, really focusing in on what's going on with Jim Jordan. He's had a really, really bad week. Of course, his nephew, a state champion wrestler, was killed in a car accident just a couple of days ago, on top of the fact that he's had a ton of bricks dropped on him. These allegations I find very difficult to believe. It just doesn't seem like Jim Jordan. He seems like a pretty protective guy of his, I was a wrestler. I had a wrestling coach. Most guys know you've had a coach. Your coaches are pretty protective of you. I have a hard time believing that Jim Jordan and 15 or 20 of the other coaches now who have come out to defend him, or people who knew him up at Ohio State, all say, this just does not sound like Jim Jordan. And it really doesn't. I mean, I think if he had some actual real information, I think he would have come forward with it. I have no doubt that he may have heard locker room banter, but you hear all kinds of stuff. I mean, based on banter, locker room banter, you can't really go to the head of the university and start, talking about this type of stuff. You have to have some evidence. So anyway, I think it's just a lot of personal attacks, and a lot of people are questioning the timing. Obviously, he's thrown his hat into the ring to be the speaker, but I think more importantly than that, when I look at what's going on and I look back at those hearings with Rodan Steen, and let's face it, Jim Jordan went after Rodan Steen pretty hard on why he hasn't been turning over documents, and he didn't let Rodan Steen just spin his way out of things. Jim Jordan came back at him and he didn't let him off the hook. And if you remember, there was a point where Rodan Steen got really irritated and he started telling Jordan, hey, you're making this personal, and it's all personal now. So because of that, people are starting to question, because let's face it, it could have been the most likely suspects would be, of course, Democrats, because he had Perkins Coie, who were working with these group of people who are making these allegations. Of course, Perkins Coie, the lawyer for the Right Reverend Clinton, the lawyer for the DNC, brought in CrowdStrike, brought in Confusion GPS. They're connected to all things anti-Trump, Democrats, and of course Jim Jordan, a supporter of the president. Jim Jordan going after Rodan Steen, which the lefties see is going after the guy who's in charge of the Trump-Russia investigation. All of this, but yeah, a lot of people wondering if maybe Rodan Steen himself, now he wouldn't directly put this stuff in motion, but a lot of people wondering if indirectly Rodan Steen may have been the guy who advanced this. But I think that these allegations have been out there for quite some time, and they're just now finding their way to Jim Jordan. I think that that's what's going on. So I don't know if there's a connection or not. It's certainly curious because Rodan Steen, of course, said, hey, you're making this personal. So, it's easy to say, okay, Rodan Steen thought that Jordan was getting personal with him, so maybe he's trying to make it personal with Jim Jordan. It's certainly a possibility. Anything is a possibility with a slime ball like Rodan Steen. But this could also be coming from, the establishment. The Republican establishment probably hates Jordan worse than the Democrats do. He's as much of a threat to them as Trump is. Do they really want Jim Jordan as Speaker of the House? I can assure you they do not. So yeah, so Jim Jordan, the lefties could have been behind it. Maybe Rodan Steen has a part in that. It could be coming from the right. It could be who knows exactly where it's all coming from. But he certainly had a bad week, and I do feel bad for him. But I think he'll overcome this. I don't think he'll let it keep him down very long. Obviously, he's bummed out over his nephew's death. But I think he'll bounce back very strong. I think this will bounce right off of him. I don't think there's anything to the allegations. I think he's been perfectly upfront about that. So we'll just have to watch and see how all this plays out. But ultimately, I think it could end up helping Jim Jordan in the long run. Because people just don't like to see guys like that getting attacked, and it could actually backfire and end up giving him more support to be the speaker, or more support to go after Rodan Steen and the deep state. So we'll just keep supporting Jim Jordan, and we'll keep watching what happens here. As far as whether or not Rodan Steen could be behind it, who knows? Who knows? He certainly took it personally. We know that because he said it. Well, Giuliani has come out and made a statement. I'll give it to you right here. Quote, Giuliani says, quote, the special counsel Mueller needs to prove before Mr. Trump would agree to being interviewed that he has evidence that Mr. Trump committed a crime and that his testimony is essential to completing the investigation. Special counsel Mueller needs to prove before Mr. Trump would agree to be interviewed that he has evidence that Mr. Trump committed a crime and that his testimony is essential to completing the investigation. That's a very, very wise move on behalf of Giuliani. He's essentially saying Trump ain't going to talk to you unless you can prove or you have solid evidence that he committed a crime, or if you can prove that his testimony is essential to completing an investigation regarding things associated with Trump-Russia collusion. Trump's not going to sit down and talk to him about Manafort or Cohen or any of these other things. So this is very good because this is Giuliani putting pressure on Mueller to force Mueller to come forward with what he has. And that's really what you see a lot of these guys doing right now. They're basically saying to Mueller, okay, show us what you got. Show us what you got. If you got something against the president, come out with it. Otherwise, shut it down. If you want to investigate all these other people for, financial crimes or whatever that happened in the past, that have no association with Trump-Russia, you need to turn that stuff over to the Southern District of New York or one of the other prosecutors or in another jurisdiction, but using the special counsel to conduct these investigations, which have nothing to do with the 2016 election, Trump-Russia, only to hold a dark cloud over the president is not right. So very, very good move on Giuliani's part. It kind of puts the onus back on to Mueller where it should be. Well, we now have the Democratic communist following and threatening Mitch McConnell. This is the second run-in that McConnell's had recently. This occurred in Louisville, and what's amazing about this is they actually videoed this and put it up on social media, I assume Twitter. That's not very smart, But you can clearly see, now McConnell's got 2 guys with him. They appear to be security, but they're not doing a very good job because they allow these people to get right on top of McConnell. And keep in mind, McConnell, he walks really slow because when he was a kid, he had a bout with polio, and it had a effect on him or whatever, and it causes him to kind of move slow or walk slow. So old Twitch is trying to get to his car after leaving a restaurant, and he was in Louisville, and these crazy-looking leftists come up to him and start harassing him, and even one of them shouting, "We know where you live. We know where you live." And a lot of these people were admittedly members of the DSA, that's the Democratic Socialist of America. Again, they put up the video. And I got to think that the Secret Service and that the FBI or whoever is going to be looking at that, probably local law enforcement in Louisville, probably the local FBI office there is going to be looking at that. I imagine these people are going to get a visit. I mean, you really can't go up to anyone really, but especially a member of Congress, and especially a senator, and especially the majority leader. Remember, it's not a guy with no power. This guy's the majority leader of the Senate. He's been around a long time. He knows a lot of people in his own right that could cause you some problems. Probably not a good guy to pick on, not a good guy to go after. I think there could be some ramifications. And keep in mind what happened to Rand Paul. And Rand Paul is the junior senator from Kentucky. And, of course, we know what happened to him. He's had 3 or 4 run-ins now with these people. So I think things are getting a little bit to the boiling point, I think. And I think we are going to start to see some crackdown. These people are going to start getting visits from the Secret Service, from the FBI, and you might even start seeing charges being filed. You're getting on the very slippery slope when you get right up on top of a U.S. senator and say something like, "We know where you live." That is a threatening term. If someone said to me, if I'm out in public or something, and someone comes to me, "Hey, buddy, I know who you are and I know where you live," I would take that very, very threateningly. I would look at that person very, very carefully. Actually, what I would do is I would follow that person. I would say, "Really? Well, I'm going to watch you very closely." I would follow the guy and find out where he lived. I'd follow him to his car and get his license plate number, and with a little help from some friends, I would find out who he is. And maybe I'd go visit him, or maybe I'd wait for him to come and visit me, and I would be ready. That's right. And so it's a very, very dangerous thing when you start doing this. And I would not be surprised to see law enforcement involvement in this particular incident because, following him and saying, "Yeah, you're, locking kids in cages and blah, blah, blah," and all that kind of crazy stuff. Yeah, I mean, okay, I guess you could say those things. But when you say something like, "We know where you live," that is a threat. That is a threat. I would take it as a threat. You would take it as a threat. Anyone else would take it as a threat. And that's a U.S. Senator. U.S. Senator, the Senate Majority Leader. So he needs better security, guys. I know that. If I would have been his security guy, I would not have let those people get that close to him. But they let him get right on top of Twitch. So, and it rattled Twitch. You can see he got very rattled by it. Things are definitely heating up in that arena, and I wonder how far this thing is going to have to go before they have to finally crack down on it. And again, these people are putting this stuff up, on the internet and social media. I mean, you can see who they are. You can identify them. They're not very smart commies, are they? Whew. The protest in Iran, I've lost track of how many days it is now, but those people are not going away. The protests are growing larger. I watched a video today. Literally must have been tens of thousands. I'm not sure what city this was in Iran, but tens of thousands of people. I mean, just hordes of people. And they are screaming, "Death to the dictator. Death to the dictator." I'm telling you, things are very precarious in Iran. Something has got to give soon. And, we are hearing these reports about regime people, leaving the country, visiting other countries. We know 2,500 of them got visas, but I don't think they'll end up here. Trump will reverse that in a minute. So, this is something that just is a day-by-day situation that I watch. I look at something every day on Iran right now and just try to follow the story where it's going. It's just pretty much building and building and building, and at some point it's going to get to the point where somebody is going to have to do something. Either the mullahs are going to have to send the military out and just put the whole thing down, which will be bloody and ugly, or they're going to have to pack their bags and get out of town, because, you know, these protests are large and they're all over the country. There comes a point in time when, you know, you got to pack your bags and get out if you want to get out. Otherwise, these people will drag you out and hang you. They really will. We also learned that Uncle Bob the Executioner will not be presenting evidence on Russia collusion at the upcoming Manafort hearings. He'll be dealing mainly with these money laundering allegations and his dealings with Viktor Yanukovych. That's the main thing that they'll be dealing with Manafort on. His team is saying at this point that the evidence they're going to present in the next hearing will not focus on anything having to do with Russia collusion. Because they got nothing. They got nothing. Wow. Nancy Pelosi, Madam Botox, her beautiful sanctuary city there in San Francisco is coming unglued. Hell, San Francisco might become Trump supporters by 2020. You're not going to believe this number. When I read it, I thought it had to be a mistake, a misprint. But apparently it's not, because it's repeated in about a half a dozen different publications. It appears that just in 1 week alone, I'm not sure what week this was, but in 1 week alone, the city of San Francisco received 16,000 complaints from citizens about the feces in the streets. Feces in the streets, 16,000 people calling to complain. The sanctuary city, the utopia of Madam Botox and the left. They want to turn all of America into that. That's what they want. So you can officially call the sanctuary city of San Francisco a shithole. A shithole. No disrespect to my viewers in San Francisco. You have my empathy that you have to walk down the street and dodge human feces. That's disturbing, man. That is disturbing. I saw a little bit of that in Europe. A little bit. You know, I can imagine what it's like out in San Francisco right now. What a shame. A beautiful city just being destroyed by the lefties, the commies, and they'll destroy your city too if you let them. There's going to be a candlelight march set for the anniversary of Seth Rich's death, which was July the 10th of 2018. It's coming up. If you are close to Arlington, Virginia, and you want to attend this candlelight march, I don't know why it's a candlelight march, because they're kicking it off at 1 o'clock p.m. I don't know how good your candle is at 1 in the afternoon, but go ahead and bring one anyway. Now, this is kind of being headed up by Mr. Berkman, Jack Berkman, who, as many of you know, I'm very, very, very skeptical of Mr. Berkman. But if you would like to attend this vigil, it's going to take place at 1 o'clock p.m. in Arlington, Virginia. They're going to meet up at the Key Bridge Holiday Inn in Arlington. That's the Key Bridge Holiday Inn in Arlington at 1 o'clock p.m. That's in Virginia. And then they're going to have some speakers and various other activities. And then at some point, they're going to march in a candlelight vigil, walk or march or what have you, down to the site of where Seth Rich was murdered just a few miles away. We still don't have the truth about Seth Rich. But I can tell you one thing, wasn't a botched robbery. It may have been a successful robbery. Maybe what they wanted was a flash drive, something else. Wasn't a botched robbery, and I don't think it were amateurs. I don't think it was amateurs. Let's put it that way. Well, House members are saying that the DOJ is still not in compliance with the request that they had 7 days to turn over the documents. But they say the DOJ did turn over some things, but not enough, and certainly not the ones that they really want, the things that tell them about the spies or informants or whatever you want to call them. So, What is next? I don't know. You can do contempt. You can have an impeachment vote. I imagine we'll find out sometime this week. But whatever you do, Rodan Steen is likely not going anywhere unless he just gets fed up and wants to resign. But I don't think they can force him out. I don't think he will resign, even if he is impeached or held in contempt. I believe he is trying to run the clock out, and we'll just have to see. But until after the midterms, I don't see anything major happening until after the midterms. Politicians do not like, especially when you're dealing with a situation in the House like they're dealing with, where 23, 24 seats could turn the House. I just think right now they're going to play it very safe. They're not going to do anything that could backfire or cause any major problems. And, taking a major action like trying to force out Rodents Team, or if Trump fired him or something like that, this could have some unknown effects, and you don't like unknowns when you're a couple months out from elections. I do think after 2018 we are going to see a major change in the game plan, and I think you're going to see a lot more aggression coming from the Republicans to get what they want. But we'll stay tuned and keep following that. Of course, we are learning that more and more of the lies of Alexandria Cortez, the Democratic communist, more and more of her lies are being revealed. She has recently had to completely take a post off of her Facebook account, where on her bio, she had stated in her bio that she had attended a school 40 minutes north of where she lived, and she had to commute every day, and it was exhausting. This is the story that she tells on her bio. This is a story that she told on her campaign trail about all these difficulties growing up in the Bronx, trying to give this impression she's this poor Hispanic kid from the Bronx who rose above it all, had to walk 40 minutes to school every day, had all these challenges and all these sorts of things. But now that the truth has come out, we know that she only lived in the Bronx until she was 5, about which age you're doing what? Attending kindergarten. But after that, her family moved, and they moved out of the Bronx. They moved into Yorktown Heights, which is a wealthy suburb in Westchester County, far from the ghetto. And at that point, my guess is she was pretty close to a very good school. And keep in mind, her father was an architect, probably, not a guy working for a minimum wage or anything like that. He wasn't, out there cutting lawns. This dude was an architect in D.C., or pretty close to D.C., very high income neighborhood. So these lies about her past, we learned that she was, pitching for tax cuts when she owned a little business. She was posing with an anti-Hillary Susan Sarandon. She is now having to change her bio. So there's a lot of things about Miss Cortez that are being revealed to have been fraudulent, and she's now having to backtrack, and she's starting to lose her darling status amongst the left, particularly amongst the Hillary supporters. The establishment are now losing, she's losing favorability with them. But the commies, I'm sure, love her. The commies love her. That's right. Now, in the last 10 minutes here, I just want to focus on Paul Sperry. The last 3 weeks, he has tweeted out some incredible tweets. We've covered a lot of them, but I just wanted to dial down on these just a little bit. And some of these are things that he tweeted out that had to do with recent releases of Page Strzok texts. Some of these are from other parts of the story he's been covering or investigating. Some of these are from new releases of Strzok Page texts that he points out really specific things. What I love about Sperry is, he's able to look at a fairly complex bunch of information and really put it into perspective, so you know exactly what it's telling you. And so I'm going to go through a few of these really key tweets that regarding these texts between Peter Strzok and Luce Lisa Page, particularly focusing on Peter Strzok. that should leave anyone who's in doubt of whether or not this guy is going to jail. These tweets should alleviate any of that. So let's go to a post that Paul Sperry made on July the 10th, 2018. Or June the 10th, I'm sorry. June the 10th of 2018. And this is a text sent by Strzok to Page on November the 3rd of 2016. And so what he tweets out on this day, he says, Peter's been stroking us, created a fake timeline of the Wiener email recovery in order to leave a misleading record for the file after the fact, for the purpose of cover your ass and getting everyone in Comey's small group on the same page. Do you realize what we're talking about here? He's saying that Peter's been stroking us, created a fake timeline of the Wiener email recovery. That's why there's so many contradictions between Comey and McCabe and Strzok and these other people who had in the New York FBI field office. So many different things that don't add up. And has a lot to do with the fact that they're working off this timeline, which Sperry is now saying was created by Peter's been stroking us, and it was a fake timeline. He jerry-rigged the timeline. That gives us a lot more evidence to suspect that he might have also jerry-rigged some 302s. The 302s, in addition to the timeline. This alone should get him locked up. You don't need an inspector general investigation. You don't need a big special counsel. You don't need any of that. If they can prove through even just an internal investigation in the FBI that Peter's been stroking us, created a fake timeline in order to mislead, in order to cover people's asses, or whatever his motives were, to do any of these things, to have faked government evidence, documents, is a big-time crime, a felony, a big fat felony. Extraordinary. And I imagine he'll be asked about that on Thursday. Then, on July the 2nd, 2018, Sperry tweeted out, the FBI in New York told Horowitz that they told the FBI headquarters on September 28th, 2016, that they had found hundreds of thousands of Hillary Clinton emails that were relative to the mid-year exam. That was the code word for the Hillary investigation. And they say that headquarters would need to follow up with a subpoena to look at them, because they were not able to, because they were told, no, your subpoena or your warrant on the laptop doesn't allow you to look at the Rotten Reverend Clinton stuff, only the Wiener stuff. But headquarters, that's the main Washington, D.C., head office, main office, headquarters of the FBI claimed that the New York office only told them that they had skeletal information and that the New York field office would follow up with the search. Somebody is lying. Now, you can see clearly that it was the main branch in D.C. that was lying, because they would have known that the New York field office was not allowed to go any further, because it was the New York field office that contacted Maine FBI, DOJ, when they discovered the Hillary Clinton stuff and said, hey, here's what we've discovered. Can we look at this? And they were told, no, you cannot. So why would the D.C., Washington, D.C. FBI, Maine Justice in Washington, D.C., tell the New York field office, no, you can't look at that stuff, but then turn around and say that, oh, when we talked to the New York field office and they told us that they had this stuff, we told them that they would, have to go ahead and follow up on that search. You see, somebody is lying, and I think we know who it is. It's probably not the folks down there in the Southern District of New York. Again, this is in the IG report. Now, here's something that was also posted up on July 2nd. It appears that Sally Moyer was the FBI attorney in the general counsel's office who balked, B-A-L-K-E-T, balked at obtaining a search warrant for Wiener's laptop. Moyer knew of the laptop and its contents on as early as September 29th, 2016. So here we see this woman her name popping up again. We know she's a contributor to the Rotten Reverend Clinton, donated to Rotten Reverend Clinton. This Sally Moyer, whose name just keeps coming up. And it appears that it was she who would have been in charge of obtaining the warrant for the Wiener laptop, and apparently she was dragging her heels, or balking, I guess is the word that they use here, balking at obtaining the search warrant, holding up the process for the benefit of the Rotten Reverend Clinton. Sally Moyer is on the list of people who are to be interviewed in the near future in public open hearings, we hope. Then we have a July 6th post by Paul Sperry, where he says Trish Anderson, who's another attorney there, another Clinton lover and attorney there at the DOJ, she and Sally Moyer of the FBI Office of General Counsel were the attorneys who provided Comey with the legal backing to define down Hillary's crime from grossly negligent to extremely careless. So apparently, once Peter's been stroking us, or Pretty Staff, whichever one of those two had the final word on changing the wording, which we're told happened 6 times on 6 different documents, after that, it apparently went to the FBI OGC, where Trish Anderson and Sally Moyer, being the attorneys, put their handiwork into effect, and they are the ones who signed off on that, which is what gave Comey the protection he needed to go out and actually do what he did, which is go out and lay out the crimes of the Rotten Reverend Clinton and then exonerate her because she was too stupid to know what she was doing. Trish Anderson and Sally Moyer, 2 names I think we're going to be hearing a lot more of in the future, and both are on the list, Nunes's list, of people he thinks should be interviewed by the Oversight and Judicial Committees. Also on July 6, Paul Sperry, Sally Moyer was the key to the Wiener laptop cover-up. She was the headquarters attorney engaging with the New York field office during that month-long delay. During the month, from the time that the New York field office called and said, hey, we got this laptop, Wiener, we were investigating his dick pics with minors, but then we stumbled onto all this Hillary stuff. It directly affects the mid-year exam. This is something that is in your purview. You need to look at this, or what have you. At that point, they contacted Sally Moyer on September 29th. And for the next 30 days, almost 30 days, 29 days, she managed to drag her feet, stonewall it, block it, whatever. She didn't move at all. They were trying to cover it up, is what they were trying to do. And then, of course, once the New York field office realized that Sally Moyer and Main Justice was dragging her feet or whatever, that's when they threatened to go public, threatened to resign and go out and make a public statement of what they knew was going on. It forced James Comey's hand. So here we can see overwhelming evidence that the Rotten Reverend Clinton case was fixed, overwhelming evidence that the investigation into Trump Russia is a hoax, and it was a insurance policy. It was a frame-up. It's amazing to have such overwhelming evidence in the IG report and then have them come out and say, we see no evidence that it infected the investigation. Absolutely amazing. Can you get any more incriminating evidence than when you have a suspect, that would be Peter's been stroking us, saying, we will stop him? It's one thing to say, I hate him. It's one thing to say, F Trump, he's an idiot, I can smell his supporters at Walmart. It's one thing to say all these things. But it's a totally different thing to say, we will get him. That is a statement of intent. That is saying, this is something I'm going to do, something we are going to do. We know the insurance policy existed. We know he tossed the Clinton case. We know that he was trying as fast as he could, trying as hard as he could to move the Trump investigation, Trump-Russia investigation forward as fast as he could. All the evidence is there. All the evidence is there, and that's why I still believe that these individuals are going to the slammer. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow. Monday's TowerGate. You guys have a good rest of your weekend. Thanks. Bye.